Okay, I'm Forrest, and I am today going to be seeing the Divergent and Muppets Most Wanted. It's opening for both movies. I'm pretty sure. I don't think they've been open before now. Muppets Most Wanted, I'm actually really excited for. I'm a big fan of the Muppets, and I really liked what Jason Segel did with the first Muppets movie that came out. The first redone or reboot of the Muppets that came out back in 2011 or whatever it was. I like his sense of humor. I think it works well with the Muppets, and I think Amy Adams, who I'm pretty sure was in that movie, did a really good job. He did a really good job. It sets up the characters well. It stays true to what they were before. So, yeah, I'm really excited for this one, too. Based on the trailers, it looks like it's going to be pretty good. I really don't even see a big problem with it based on what I've seen from the trailers. I've been excited since I first saw the trailers, too. Divergent, I really don't know much about this one. I'm going to be totally honest. I've read a few reviews, and the early reviews have not been very positive, so I don't know what to expect. Divergent kind of looks like it's going to be like a poor man's Hunger Games or something. Like, that's the vibe I was getting from it. Kind of like how in the Host felt like the previews for the Host kind of felt like a poor man's Twilight, which is weird to say because Twilight felt like a poor man's Twilight. The Host was terrible, though. I'm hoping that Divergent is better than the Host, or I doubt it, though, because the trailers weren't grabbing me, and I asked the guy at the ticket stand. I was like, "Hey, how long is Divergent?" He told me it was like 2.5 hours long, which is insane for what I assume is like a preteen or a teenage like sci-fi fantasy adventure, I guess. Like, I'm not entirely sure what it is. And 2.5 hours for a movie like that is crazy. Like, that's like Harry Potter long. So I don't know. We'll see how these two movies go. I'm gonna go see both of them, and we'll see what's up. See you after the movies. Okay, so I just got back from Divergent and the Muppets movie, Muppets Most Wanted. I saw them back to back. Basically, I ran from Muppets Most Wanted right into Divergent. And I was surprised by both films, actually. Muppets Most Wanted wasn't quite as good as I thought it'd be, and Divergent was much better than I thought it'd be. I still didn't like Divergent, which I predicted, but I dislike it far less than I thought I would. Muppets movie I still liked, but I liked it much less than I thought it would. So I guess I'll start with Divergent since I just got out of seeing it. And that's the movie I didn't like, so I'll end on a positive note. I'm not sure if I like the idea of doing this car because I know that other people do their movie reactions in a car right after seeing them. Like, I know Brad Jones does it, but I don't know. I'll just have to steal that idea, I guess, because I really want to get these reactions down while they're still fresh, while both movies are still very fresh in my head. So Divergent. First, I gotta say that the production values in this movie were shockingly good. Like, they were a lot better than what I thought they'd be. I mean, from the trailers, they looked. I won't say they looked bad. I thought that light would turn on. I won't say they looked bad from the trailers, but they didn't. I guess from the trailers, the production values looked a lot shoddier. I don't know. Like, I didn't think that it would be that well photographed and that well put together. Like, it was very coherently put together. I was very impressed with certain elements of the film. I mean, for the most part, it was edited fairly okay. Cinematography was... It could be bad, but for the most part, it was consistently, all right. Let's see. Okay, I gotta I actually have to admit, if it hadn't been for two really big things, I probably would have liked this movie. But these are two things that are really, really big. Like, these are two huge problems I have with it. First of all, the movie, okay, Divergent is about how a society has been, after a war, I guess, like 100 years ago, they split their society. And this is all based in one city, by the way. It's all based in, like, a futuristic Chicago. Which, that doesn't make any sense, but whatever. And they've split their society into 5 sections, or 5 factions, I guess they call it in the movie. And they've got it split. The first couple, like, makes sense. Like, they got split into, like, the erudites in one section, which are, like, the intellectual, logical thinking people. The dauntless in another section, or faction. And they're, like, I guess they're, like, the fearless, courageous type of people. It wasn't explained that well what it took to get into the dauntless, but from what I gather, they're, like, they're the jocks of the society. I mean, like, the erudites are the nerds, the dauntless are the jocks. But then the other 3 don't make sense because there's the honest group, but I can't remember what the fuck it's called. Excuse me, what the heck it's called. But there's the honest group. They're basically a society of people who like telling the truth. Then there's the faction for the kind people. And the faction for the selfless people. They're 2 different factions in the society, and it's like, they're basically the same thing. I mean, isn't being selfless almost the exact same thing as being kind? They're so similar to me. I don't know why they had to be categorized into 2 different things. I mean, I don't know. That made no sense to me. That was like the first thing that made no sense to me, and that's a pretty big thing. Even though those 3 sections aren't really talked about that much, it's mostly about the dauntless and the erudites. That's mostly what this movie's about. The smart people and the jocks, the nerds and the jocks. So in the movie, the main character, who I will get to. God, I hated her. But basically, the main character. First of all, I guess when you reach a certain age in this movie, like, I don't even know, they didn't say, I guess like 18, you take an aptitude test, and it tells you which faction in society you're supposed to go into. And the main girl takes the test, and her results are inconclusive. So they don't know which faction she should go into, and they tell her that she can make her own choice, which you can do anyway, which kind of sounds like Harry Potter and the Sorting Hat. Like, I kept thinking about that the whole movie, about how it's like Harry Potter and the Gryffindors and the Slytherins and the Hufflepuffs and the Ravenclaws. Like, there's even, like, one of them is kind of like the bad people. One of them is kind of like the courageous people. One of them is the nice people. One of them is the nerds. Like, it's basically the Harry Potter setup, only as a whole society of Harry Potter people. And so, but she takes the aptitude test, and she can choose which faction she goes into, which kind of makes the aptitude test pointless, but whatever. And she chooses to go into the Dauntless because in the beginning of the movie they said that, like, everyone looks up to the Dauntless because they're the popular jock people, I guess. And it kind of makes sense because everyone else is kind of like studying or like helping out other people and doing all kinds of boring stuff, but then the Dauntless are just like running through the streets cheering and everything, even though they're supposed to be kind of like the police in the society. I don't know, this whole thing is just kind of a mess, honestly, with the story structure. I haven't read the book, but I can't even imagine how. The book's gotta be better than this. Like, it's gotta be it's gotta be more coherently put together in terms of story. Otherwise, I can't imagine why they would make it into a movie. So I think the biggest problem with this movie was the script. That and a lot of the acting. But yeah, so she decides to become Dauntless, right? And the Dauntless, their whole thing is that they don't want to have fear. And I think that's like what it is. They're like trained to be soldiers for the most part, it seems like. But what doesn't make sense about that, though, is like you can't be completely fearless and a soldier, because at one point during a training exercise, the lead girl, Beatrice, she is told to stand in front of a target, and and one of the guys throws knives at her, and if she flinches, basically she's removed from the society. And why would you do that? Why would you make them like willing to get hurt like that? Doesn't that kind of like, it'd be like if you trained a group of soldiers to never dodge anything. Like if you see someone shooting at you, just stand there and be fearless because that's more honorable. It just doesn't make sense, and I don't understand why they got away with that kind of stuff, you know? And there's just like a lot of stuff like that happening in this movie where they don't make any sense with what they're throwing out at us. Like they're taught to like jump off a building into like a big hole, and they're like, well, you just gotta do it, you just gotta go because you gotta be fearless. And I mean, because he's telling them to jump off, I guess they can know that, well, nothing bad's going to happen to them, but they're not taught any kind of caution or, like, self-preservation. I mean, they're just basically told to jump off and hope that there's either water or a net at the bottom catching them. It's stupid. So a lot of the story is completely stupid. And that's the first really big problem. That sounds like a lot of big problems, but that's the first, like, big problem I had with the movie. And the second one I got into briefly, and that's the acting and the characters. And, I mean, this lead girl, her name is, I think, Shailene Woodley. I don't know. I'm not familiar with her at all, and I don't know if I've seen any of her other work. She reminded me of the girl from The Host, in that she was the blandest girl ever. And it's not even like Kristen Stewart in the Twilight series is a completely different kind of bland, where, I mean, yeah, she's bland and she's emotionless, but I can at least get a sense of, my God, I can't believe I'm comparing a character, the way you portray a character to something from Twilight. But in Twilight, I at least could get a sense of character, even if it's a terrible character. I at least got a sense of character. But this girl in this movie, I got no sense of who this person was at all. Like, I have no idea who she was as a person. I just got like a bland feeling that, like, she's courageous, kind of, and smart, kind of, and a good friend, kind of. There's just like, and I guess that's part of, like, she's a Divergent, which means she doesn't really fit in anywhere, so they should have made her like a strong character, with different elements of each, and different strong elements of each. I guess then the other trap they could have fallen into was making her too much of an awesome, like, Superman character. Instead, they went completely the other route, where she's just not really anything. She's just kind of really cool, but at the same time not. She gets her ass kicked when she's fighting a lot. But at the same time, she's really good at throwing knives, and she's really good at she's not even really good at anything. She's just kind of okay at a lot of things. So Divergent wasn't very good. It was way too long, too. That was another big thing. Like, it was 2 hours and 20 minutes long, like almost 2.5 hours long. Like, it was, and it didn't, I mean, there are movies that are 3 hours, 4 hours long that don't feel like they're 3 or 4 hours long, this movie felt really long. And I'm not saying, like, it's boring, you know, because there's a lot of action scenes in it. And the action, for the most part, is done fairly well. So it's not like it was boring. It just felt really long. Like if they dragged out different scenes of a Harry Potter movie for a really long time. I don't know. Like, and again, it's not like it was poorly paced for the most part. It's not like the movie dragged. It just felt like they were throwing so much stuff at us and setting up so many different kinds of plots without really developing anything either. Like, all the characters, I mean, not just the lead character, but all the side characters were really bland. And like Maggie Q's in this movie for maybe a minute of screen time total, maybe. Like, if she has that much screen time, I would be surprised. And she got one of the top billings in the movie. Her scenes are like drive-by, like, here's Maggie Q, now she's gone. And then there's Kate Winslet is also in this movie, which blew my mind. I had no idea she was in this movie. She was going to be in this movie until I saw the opening credits and her name was listed there. And she didn't even look like she cared at all about this movie. Like, which you can kind of understand. I mean, she's done, like, Titanic, Sense and Sensibility. Why would she care about this movie? And her character had no character. She was just, like, the bland, you know, archetypal villain that didn't really serve much of a purpose. So then there was that too. And I'm criticizing this movie a lot. And I actually don't know if I should be, because there are some really good aspects of this movie. I mean, like I said, the cinematography, for the most part, isn't that bad. It's well shot. The action sequences are well edited and well put together. And it has some really interesting concepts that, it doesn't follow through with it all, but it sets up really interesting stuff. Like the nature of choice and if we are who we choose to be, or if we have like a predestined outcome, which it should have focused more on stuff like that, you know, like Blade Runner, instead of the stuff it did. Yeah, and there's like this romance that happens that comes out of nowhere, completely out of nowhere in the movie. They didn't build it up at all. They're just, all of a sudden, there's a romantic story in the movie. Yeah, it's not very good. I don't recommend it. A lot of the people that I saw in the theater with, for the most part, it seemed like it was a bunch of guys, which surprised me. I thought this was like for some reason, I thought this movie was going to be marketed more towards women. I'm not sure why I thought that, but there were a lot of dudes in the movie too. Like, it's definitely more dudes, at my theater at least, than there were girls seeing this movie. And I'm not sure why that was. And I'm not even really sure if they had a really good time. Like, some of them seemed really bored, in spite of all the action. And I mean, I heard like a couple people behind me, at times they would like interact with what was going on screen, like, you know, or, but that was kind of rare. So if you're interested in seeing Divergent, I'm not going to tell you not to, because if you read the book and you really want to see the movie because you really like the book, then I go for it, because I haven't read the book, so I don't know how good of an adaptation it is. The movie's like passable on some levels. Like, if you're not that worried about character development or stuff like that, then you're going to be impressed by the production values. I will definitely say that. Other than that, I can say skip it. Okay, so that's Divergent. That was like 16 minutes of me ranting about that one movie. And the other movie I saw was Muppets Most Wanted. And I liked it. I mean, I'm a big Muppets fan. I have been since I was a kid, and I think the first Muppet movie I ever saw was the Muppet Christmas Carol. And I've seen the original Muppet movie from 1979, and I saw from what this movie stated in the movie, because, you know, the Muppet movies are very, very meta. This movie stated that that the previous Muppet movie was also a sequel, but I always saw it as kind of a reboot. So I guess this one it's a direct sequel to the previous movie. I mean, it picks up right where it left off, and the opening, oh yeah, the opening song number in that movie, like the first song sequence they have is all about the fact that it's a sequel, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, not all the songs in this movie worked really well, but like the very first song worked really well. Like, it was fun, it was funny. There were a couple other songs I can't really remember that I know worked really well, and they're kind of catchy. I mean, they're not, I don't know if any of them are Oscar worthy, but a lot of them are pretty catchy. But I think the first thing, though, that I need to talk about is the fact that Jason Segel was not a part of this movie. And I really wish he was. Because his sense of humor and his charisma just worked so well in the first movie, or in the previous movie. Like, really, really well. And the fact that this one didn't have that, it felt like there was a piece missing. I mean, it felt like, because it wasn't as funny as the last movie, and it wasn't as clever. It was still pretty clever, but it wasn't as clever as the previous movie either. But it needed Jason Segel's touch, and that's a really weird thing to think, but yeah, he did a really good job with the previous movie, and this one kind of suffered without him. So Muppets Most Wanted. I think from the trailers, you pretty much get a sense of what this movie is. It's a plot that you've seen before, where there's a bad guy who looks just like the main character, and he impersonates him. He puts the main character away it takes his place in prison, basically. And in this case, it's Kermit. And everyone else is really clueless about it, and that's where a lot of the movie's humor comes from too. Is like how, and the movie's really upfront about it, which I like. The Lego Movie was also like really self-aware, and I like that kind of humor. And if you don't, you're not gonna like this movie, and you're not gonna like Lego Movie. But yeah, the self-aware of like how dumb the Muppets were with not being able to figure out that this guy isn't Kermit the Frog. That is really funny. But something that kind of, okay, I'm getting a little off track, but Ricky Gervais is in this movie, and he was pretty good. He had some funny stuff, but he was kind of like Kate Winslet in Divergent, where it seemed like he didn't really want to be in the movie, or either that, or like he just wasn't, I don't know, it felt like he wasn't putting 100% into his performance. But he's still really good, and he still gets a lot of laughs. And you can tell that, I mean, the whole movie's trying, and you can tell that he's trying. Yeah, and then there's a lot of cameos in this movie, like in every Muppet movie, which is one of the charms of the Muppet movies. Although there weren't as many cameos of like really big name people in this one as I thought there would be, and I mean, there were cameos, but like little kids aren't gonna get these. Like, little kids aren't gonna know who Celine Dion is, or I'm having even some trouble remembering who the other cameos were of. But they're not gonna get that. But not saying that the little kids aren't gonna like this movie, though. There were kids in this movie theater, and they weren't always laughing, but when the jokes hit home for them, they really hit home. And that's kind of like how this movie was, because it wasn't always funny, but when it had a good joke, it really had a good joke. And there's not really even a whole lot I can say about it now that I think about it, but it is good. I mean, it is funny, it is fun. There's a lot of jokes with like Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog potentially getting together. the Muppets are... A lot of the side character Muppets in this movie aren't very well developed. I noticed now that I think about it. Not that really bothers you when you're watching the movie, and I mean, kids aren't really going to care that much. But it would have been nice if a lot of the side character Muppets had bigger roles in this movie. Like Fozzie Bear has a big role, and Miss Piggy obviously has a big role. But like Gonzo doesn't really do a whole lot in this movie. He has a couple good jokes, and that's about it. I can't think of the professor's name right now, but he and Beaker, they have like two jokes that they kind of do, and that's about it. So yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if they had like done more with the side Muppets, and if they had done more with the cameos. I did want better song numbers. I mean, the song numbers were fine. I mean, they were catchy. I was getting into them. A couple were like really bland, but they were the vast minority. A lot of the songs were really good, were acceptable at least. And like the first couple songs were really good. I noticed that. Yeah, I think if you're a Muppets fan, you should see it. It's not the best Muppets movie out there. The previous one was a lot better than this one. Actually, the 4 Muppets movies I've seen so far, which include the Muppet movie, Muppet Christmas Carol, Muppets from 2011. I hope I'm getting that date right. And this one. This one's my least favorite. And I think it's mostly because it's not as funny. And it's not as... It doesn't feel as well-rounded as the other Muppet movies did, because the Muppet movies got their strength from having all these different characters interacting in a lot of different ways, and always really working off each other in a really good way, in a really funny way too. And this one didn't have as much of that, and I think that was the biggest weakness of this one. But yeah, it's good. If your kids like Muppets, absolutely let them see this one, because they'll find it funny. They'll find it amusing, and you'll find it amusing because it'll have references that the adults will get. And this is something else that the Muppet movie does that I really like, that I am glad it does, and I'm glad, and I wish more kids movies these days would do it. It's got adult jokes in the fact that adults will get it, but the kids won't. But not because they're dirty. Not because they're poop jokes. Even though there is like one poop joke, I think, in this movie. Like, there's no wiener jokes in the Muppet movies. There's no, like, sexual innuendos in the Muppet movies. If they do an adult joke that adults will get, it'll be like, oh, our movie is better than Citizen Kane. Or, wow, I wish we could always pay off people to write good reviews for us. Like, it's gonna be stuff like that adults would get. Little kids aren't gonna understand why that would be funny, but a little kid is gonna understand why it's funny when Kermit the Frog gets punched in the face. That stuff they are gonna get. They are gonna laugh at, and adults will laugh at this stuff too. Like when Kermit the Frog and his evil half, or his evil lookalike, are standing in front of a mirror frame, and they're mimicking each other, trying to do each other, and Kermit's trying to do all his movements at the same time. That's funny. I mean, that's like a callback to Duck Soup, and adults who have seen Duck Soup are going to think that's really funny. Adults who haven't are going to still think it's pretty funny. Kids are definitely going to think that's funny, because that's probably the first time they've ever been introduced to that joke. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Muppets. I'm a big fan of all the Muppets movies. This one was a lot weaker, but it still gets its strength from its humor and from its charm and from the sheer power of all the stars it has, including all the Muppets. So, Muppets movie, see it. If you are into the Muppets at all, see it. If you're not, if you're not a Muppets fan for whatever reason, give the other ones a chance first, but then give this one a chance. Give the Muppets a chance, because the Muppets are not just for little kids, which is something that I really think more people should understand. The Muppets are not just for little kids. They're for everyone. So yeah, see the Muppets movie, and don't see Divergent unless you, like, really want to. And this is my first video reaction to the movies I saw in the theater, and I hope to do more of these, and I hope that you liked hearing my reaction. I know I probably talk really fast, and because I got a lot of ideas I'm trying to get at once, and I know I don't take a lot of breaths when I'm talking either, because I get really excited about it, because I love movies. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative, and I hope that you'll see more of my stuff. Thanks a lot.